Alright, it's finally that time again. It's tier list time. We haven't done a tier list on this channel in a while. I don't think since 1.0. And I feel like, it's time to speak up on where the meta is currently. We finally got a lot more characters to come into the game. The game has received a drastic change into what the combat is like now. And so I believe characters placements should be a lot different these days. So we're going to look into actually Prydwen's tier list first. And then probably in a separate video, we're going to give my own tier list. We're going to go over some of their placement changes and how they feel. And they've actually made some drastic changes to this tier list that I agree and kind of disagree with, but we're gonna get into that now. Also, let me know if you guys pull from miHoYo or even copies of Haramasa, because if you lost a 50-50 like me, be sure to check out my guys at Loot Bar before you go for that guaranteed. Loot Bar is a top-up service that offers amazing deals on premium currency for some of your favorite gacha games like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and even good old Zenless Zone Zero. Loot Bar offers 15% off of any premium currency, which is 15% cheaper than the official games. If you want to buy some monochromes, all you need to do is select the amount you want, enter your UID, and select your server region. Then bam! Your currency is loaded onto your account in a matter of minutes and even sometimes seconds. Now you're probably wondering, how is that even possible? Well, this is because Loot Bar is cooperating with the HoYoverse routing partner to help offer you the most affordable rates based on where you live. This means you're getting the premium currency you want at a discounted rate on a completely safe and secure platform. I know this because I myself use the platform, and they work with other amazing creators like Raiden, Shotgun, and Dakaja, as well as they have amazing reviews from other customers too. So if you're still trying to get those copies of miHoYo and Haramasa, be sure to head over to Loot Bar by clicking my link in the description below and get 8% off new user coupon so you can grab those units before it's too late. So the major things that they added is that with the change log, they've added miHoYo and Haramasa to the list, but they've combined the pure DPS and the anomaly DPS category, which I kinda agree and disagree with. I understand why they did that, since they personally feel that there isn't a big enough difference between pure DPS and anomaly DPS, as their overall goal is to deal damage. But I think the biggest difference between those roles is that how they go about dealing that damage. Pure DPS are normally just our attackers. They're very crit based characters, and so a majority of the time their damage comes from focusing on crit windows, where anomaly DPS, they don't really care about stun windows. They more so care about focusing just building overall DPS in general, because they're going to be dealing it through their anomaly build up, which still does a drastic amount even when the enemy isn't stunned. They also focus more on disorder comps in comparison to attackers. Attackers don't really care about being a part of a disorder comp, but if they can be a part of one, it's still really good as well. I think just the overall effectiveness of how these characters are played and the teams that you construct around them are different enough that I feel like that having them a part of separate categories is a stronger idea to go about. And I feel like as more of these type of characters come through, we're going to start seeing more and more differences between pure DPS and anomaly DPS roles, that I think they're probably going to add the split again down the road. They also added meta lines, which if you guys haven't seen any of their other tier lists in their previous game, meta lines are essentially just telling you where these characters falls within the meta. They have the apex characters, which are the characters that are going to be primarily played in any form of content. We have the meta characters, which aren't as strong as the apex characters, but they still show up a lot in a lot of different teams. And then your niche characters, which hardly show up at all. They aren't that strong, but they're still viable enough to clear content. To get it started, let's get into the apex characters. And for our DPS, miHoYo is in a lane of her own. She is an anomaly DPS character that is playing an attacker role. But she's providing the benefits of both worlds. She's able to deal massive amount of damage. She's able to trigger a build anomaly, and the characters that work with her flow off of this so well that she's deleting so many different forms of content so fast, and it's just honestly insane because of how easy of a character she is to play. But the complexity of miHoYo where it comes into play is the fact that she focuses on having a really strong team dynamic. She's easy to play, but the teams that you have to coordinate and use with her are a little bit complex, making her a little bit difficult. But I don't think difficulty when it comes to playing a character or itself or a team should determine where characters place. A character's placement on a tier list should be based on how well they perform when played properly. A character shouldn't be dropped down a tier because of a player's skill issue. To me, that just doesn't make sense. But enough rambling on that. You'll see, we'll kind of get more into that as we progress through the other parts of the tier list. For a tier 0.5 for our DPS, I don't disagree with this at all. This honestly makes the most sense to me. And I'll even say you could kind of argue that Bernice might actually be tier 0 too. Now, she isn't dropping or performing the same amount of damage as miHoYo, but I think where Bernice's tier 0 potential comes at is at her overall team flexibility. She is the main character that's able to work with so many different characters in the game, just like these two support characters here and like Caesar. Her flexibility of being able to work with so many characters that can benefit from the off-field damage that she can provide makes her a really valuable character. And not even just anomaly characters can take advantage of that, but attackers can as well, like Soldier 11, which she might be the only one, honestly. But we also have Evelyn coming on the way, which I'm pretty sure that Evelyn's going to be able to take advantage of it too. Jane is a pretty selfish DPS, anomaly DPS, but she plays her role so well that she's like miHoYo, where she just does so much freaking damage, but miHoYo just does even more damage. And it's insane. The Yanagi has a unique ability to trigger her own unique disorder, as well as still applying a normal disorder, making her damage potential being able to skyrocket. With an overall team that can focus on building anomaly and disorders, it takes her out the window. So I understand why they have these three girls here. These are the anomaly queens of the game, even including miHoYo, who we could say that miHoYo is technically the queen and these girls are the princesses, but essentially they are really good. Now, I think what's surprising to most people is that Jué is here. And I think Jué is here is overall because of her comfortability and her burst DPS potential. Jué plays regular plain old Zenless, just like how we were in 1.0, where she wants a stun unit and she wants a support to help boost her damage, which is why her best in slot team still revolves around Qingyi and Nicole. Though they both build stun really heavily for her, and Qingyi also provides that I think it's like a 200% stun damage multiplier increase. And then we have Nicole that also increases the ether damage a part of her team and allows you to quick assist and help Jué manage her enhanced shot shells really well. And so Jué, when it's stun damage time, when it's her phase, she's just crapping out damage and triggering her ether corruption upon her enemy, dealing massive amounts of damage, like chunks of health bars coming off. Pretty similar to some of these anomaly units in the game, and I can understand why they would place her on 0.5. Now, with my questioning and why I don't agree with the split that they provided here with the pure DPSs and anomaly DPS is that their placement for Haramasa. And I say that because Haramasa is essentially the same thing as Jué, but the electric version. Hear me out. Haramasa is a burst DPS. His very favorable position is being able to deal massive amount of damage within stun windows. One of his best partners that allow him to do that is just like Jué, Qingyi, as well as he's able to be paired with other characters like Rina within the supportive role to also allow him to quick assist and do his thing. Also, whenever you proc anomaly, and I believe it's either anomaly or disorder, you automatically generate his quivers on field, not even requiring him to set up to come in and deal massive damage. So whenever you just generally play his team structures properly, he's able to have the same benefit that other characters provide for Jué whenever it's time for him to deal damage within his burst windows. So if we're stating that Jué is 0.5, how isn't Haramasa 0.5? Which makes me want to go into what are his cons. And if we look at their cons, it says does significantly more damage against stunned enemies with a noticeable decrease outside. So when they're not stunned, this is the same issue that Jué has. Jué does significantly more damage when enemies are stunned in comparison to when she's not. It says requires more effort and planning and skill to be played at maximum potential compared to other characters. This is where I stated earlier, this should not be a con. This should not be viewed as a fault of the character because that they require you to be better with him. He has a higher skill floor. That shouldn't be a con. That's a strength of the character. That's what makes the character more interesting. That shouldn't be the reason why you would drop his placement or make him weaker in comparison to someone like Jué. Which, if I'm not mistaken, in their explanation for Jué, they even say something similar, that Jué is a combo-based character who can take a bit of practice to pick up and play perfectly, presenting a learning curve for players. They essentially said the same thing, but differently. I don't see how this makes them different. And then the last thing for Haramasa, they say enemies that have shorter stun durations or resistance to being stunned limit Haramasa's burst potential. And this is something that can fall on Jué. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. If this is my list, I'm saying that if Jué is 0.5, Haramasa is 0.5. It's that simple, in my opinion. Now, you guys are probably looking, well, why is Ellen T1 the baby girl? She's falling off. What's happening? And Ellen's core issue is always going to be that in order to perform her maximum damage, her rotations need to have no form of mistake. Because performing any little bit of mistake in Ellen's rotation, or having to be able to dodge and not complete her full rotations, you see a significant amount of DPS drop off that makes playing her a bit difficult. In some instances, you feel forced to play characters like Caesar so that she can always get her rotations off consistently, or you have to have a strong stunner that's able to build days really fast so that you just instantly allow her to come on field, build her stacks, do her rotations, and go about her day without being interrupted. So I would say Ellen's issue is consistency, which makes me come over here to my hot take. Soldier 11 is better than Ellen. I said it. And why do I say this? It's because her rotations are a lot more consistent. She's not really losing a lot of DPS, or really any DPS at all, when she's able to perfect dodge and trigger her dodge counter. While Ellen, on the other hand, she's pretty much missing out a lot because she needs to build stacks. While Soldier doesn't have to do that. She has the great benefit of being able to use her energy whenever she pleases, and being invulnerable, and applying her fire suppression whenever she wants, even when she doesn't have energy. So if you have the ability to time her basic attacks, which is something I do fairly easy, you see that the true damage potential of Soldier 11 is really high. Also, in comparison to the team building with Ellen and Soldier 11, Soldier 11's teams are overall just better than Ellen's. Ellen's ideal team is still with Lycan and Sokaku, but she can also switch out Lycan for Lighter. The issue there is that with Soldier, Lighter is also her best in slot, and then she has Bernice, who's another best in slot. And then if we don't include Bernice and we put in Lucy is a better support character than Sokaku because she's not as sluggish. It's so easy to apply her buff, and then her performing her ultimate now within the ultimate changes, her damage output that she provides to support her team is a lot stronger. The consistency of being a support unit for Soldier 11 in comparison to Sokaku for Ellen is just a lot better, which when thinking of these tier lists, I'm pretty sure within their guidelines for Prydwen, they even mentioned that they think about these characters with their best in slot. Soldier within her best in slot is better than Ellen. I said it. I think it. It sucks if you're an Ellen player, especially since she's a limited character. But yeah, that's how I feel. And I know a lot of y'all gonna be like, well, she's about to get power crept by Evelyn next patch. Okay, and it doesn't make Ellen any better. And then we come down here to the 1.5s to the T3. We have that girl Piper, which makes sense for me for Piper. Piper does really good physical damage. She's able to build up stacks to support her team. Piper's overall issue is pretty similar to Ellen, where she's susceptible to being interrupted, or she takes a lot of damage when performing her rotations. So you need to run a character like Caesar so that she doesn't essentially end up dying when trying to perform her rotations. But when it comes to like being, I guess, an anomaly DPS character, the things that she can do and provide just isn't strong enough to make her on the level of the characters above her. But she is pretty good. And then we come down to T2 with the girl Grace and Nekomana. Nekomana's big issue is that, again, she's a physical unit. There's a bunch of physical DPS characters, so there's not a lot of team comp she can work with. She also has the gimmick where she likes to attack characters from behind, but all of our enemies are really active with movement, and trying to always get those back hits are just not ideal. She's also very energy hungry, and she doesn't have like a big return when on damage when using this amount of energy either. She's also relying on dodge counters and quick assists, which she doesn't get often enough. Hindering her DPS as a whole as well. So she's just at a point where you need copies for her to be effective, and having her in M0 just isn't strong enough, and it just isn't worthwhile investing into, which is sad because Nekomana was one of the main characters that a lot of people was like pumping up and being excited for when the game was initially releasing, because she seemed pretty good within like the beta servers. And then Grace only falls down this low because of how they combine all these DPS characters together, which again, I would separate this, and Grace will potentially probably be like T1 1.5 at the worst. But I guess why they will put Grace down this low is because of her issues with that. She likes building shock anomalies, and a lot of teams that you pair her with do have other shock units in it. But the thing is that once shock is applied, she doesn't deal additional damage to those enemies, which really hurts her DPS. So when it comes to playing Grace, she really plays a sub sub DPS role, but she doesn't provide the sub DPS benefits like Bernice. She plays her role pretty well, but she needs certain specific comps for it to be essentially functional and worthwhile doing. For our T3 characters, the only one I disagree with down here is Billy. I would probably move Billy up to T2 just because Billy, the biggest difference between Billy and then Anton and Corrin is that Billy has a form of consistency. Billy is a consistent character. You know what the type of damage you're going to be getting with him because all of his damage comes from him being in his crowd shot, which is pretty effective to consistently land with him, as well as that he's able to boost his ultimate damage, I believe, every time he triggers a chain attack, if I'm not mistaken. So you know what you're getting into. But when it comes to Anton and Corrin, Anton has like this very specific window with having his burst drill active, and that leads to him having energy issues and having severe DPS fall off when he doesn't have that form available. It compares to the DPS that he does, it just isn't effective to the point that he kind of will start be playing the sub DPS role with a character like Haramasa. Corrin also has a really bad consistency issue with how crazy her damage fluctuates with her whole chainsaw gimmick. If she's able to get the whole thing off, she has some of the highest DPS in the game. But if any form of enemy begins to move, and because of her poor movement in the game, you're going to see significant fall off, making her too inconsistent of a character to invest into. Then we have our Apex stun characters. Lighter and Xing Yi, these are the premier stunners in the game, and these are the characters that you want to aim for stunners to be like, because now stunners are moving into a much more greater role of being stun supports. So like for instance, Lighter, he provides ice and fire res, he increases ice and fire damage, and he increases the stun window against enemies that are stunned. This is something that every DPS will love, especially under the fire and ice category, because he's going to be increasing the DPS available for his team. Then Xing Yi, a similar thing. She builds Anomaly really well with electricity, as well as that she provides a 200% stun damage multiplier within the stun window for her DPSs, allowing characters like Julian and Haramasa to deal massive amount of damage within her comp. She also has great team flexibility and a lot of invulnerability frames with her whole basic attack to apply the stun damage multiplier buff for her team, making her very effective when she's on field. And then we have Lycan. Lycan is just essentially a worse version of them. He doesn't have as great of a flexibility as a stun unit because most of the time he only really works with Ellen. He can work with Miyabi as well, but Miyabi doesn't really care to have him on her team. He can just effectively work with her. He also provides that stun damage multiplier buff, just not as strong as Xing Yi's if I'm not mistaken. He also provides ice res and great days. He can work on other teams as well, but I think we are getting at a point that you want stun units that complement your element as well as provide you bonuses too. So even though that he can work on other teams, there aren't other ice units, I think regardless you will want him to work with those type of characters. Coletta is the worst supportive stunner out of them all. You'll understand why when I get to Ambi next, but this is because she provides a buff to chain attacks. Where the current game is at the moment, chain attacks does not occur enough for us to value that form of buff currently, but maybe there's a character in the future that can help hold that value to a much higher standard. She's also pretty sluggish for a stun unit, so she is more susceptible to being interrupted, and she needs her enhanced basic attacks to perform effective stun damage, but when she does, she's really good at it. She's a great dazer, just overall in comparison to everybody else, the supportive capability that she provides for her team just isn't as strong. And then we have Ambi, the worst stunner in the game, because she's selfish. This is why I say that Coletta is the worst supportive stunner, because Ambi doesn't support her team at all. The only thing that she has support of is with her M4, I believe, and that provides energy back for other electric units, but not every unit on her team, which sucks. She's a great free-to-play stunner, but that's the only benefit to her. She's just really good free-to-play. She also takes up a lot of field time because she builds days okay. It just takes too long a lot of time to get an effective amount of days from her, making her pretty much weaker than every other stun character in the game. And then we have our support units, and overall this is the part of the tier list that makes the most sense. Caesar being the top of the food chain, it shouldn't be a surprise. She provides a shield that not only prevents you from taking damage while also being uninterrupted, while also providing a attack buff. He also has pretty good stun capabilities, which is not the best, but having that still makes it very viable, especially when you can play her in comps that won't have a stunner on your team. And she's really flexible. She's one of the most flexible characters in the game because she honestly benefits any team that she's on. It's also really easy to apply Caesar shield because you don't need to interact with anything. You just literally switch to Caesar, hit hit EX special, shield applied, and then you just reset. It also lasts super long. I believe it lasts like 30 seconds, which is really good, and it's really easy to replenish whenever you need to, just switching her back onto the field, especially even in active combat. Really good unit, probably going to be one of the best support units in the game for a very long time. Then we have our girls who's been some of the best support units in the game for a long time, Lucy and Nicole. And this is because Lucy and Nicole provides very generic buffs that works for anybody, as well as Nicole with debuffs that work with any character in the game. Also with Lucy, she's able to apply her buffs at M6 really easily through her EX special attack, her chain attack, and her ultimate. And with the ultimate changes in the game, she's also able to assist with damage due to her kit requiring her to essentially being built as an attacker. So even as a support unit, Lucy does a pretty considerable amount of damage. Nicole is in a similar but different boat, where she provides a debuff that decreases her enemy defense, but she also builds anomaly proficiency really well, allowing her to proc corruption with her teammates, especially with Jué really often and really consistently, allowing her to help her overall team DPS because of this. Also, I believe she provides a crit rate buff with her EX special and her ultimate when your teammates are attacking enemies within it. So again, overall helps with her team DPS. Really good, really good. I think these are going to be some of the best supports within the game for a long time until we get other supports, until we get other limited supports to replace them. So investing into these characters is it's an amazing use because they're going to be here for the long haul. And then we have Rena, who got moved up to 0.5. And they state that she got moved up because Rena has proven to be a popular choice for Yanagi teams and has a solid position in the top in-game content meta team. We're raising her up one tier for now, but she might need to be raised again in the next update. So they believe because she's being paired with Yanagi and she works really effective with Yanagi, who's one of the best DPSs in the game, her value of being a support has been increased because there's a character that heeds value in what she does, which makes sense. My only thing is that since this is limited to really just electric characters or characters that do take advantage of the pin ratio buff that she provides, which mostly at the moment I think are the electric characters and potentially Miyabi right now, I don't think that moves her up to 0.5 in my opinion. The consistency of applying Rena's buff isn't as good as a Nicole and a Lucy. I think that they're still overall effective, stronger supports than her, and I think that even the characters that vary the buffs that she provides have other teams that have stronger value than that, which brings me to Seth. They have Seth labeled T1. I think Seth is 0.5. And this is because of the shield they provides with anomalous proficiency. It's really strong. It's one of the strongest shields in the game, right behind Caesar's. He's also able to apply the shield not only to one character, but two if you play him effectively, which if you guys don't know, he's able to apply the shield when he performs his quick assist. He's also able to apply it whenever you trigger this move with his chain attacks, which is pretty effective and easy to do with him being M6, because at M2 he automatically generates the amount of resolve that he needs on his special meter to perform the whole basic attack for the quick assist. So it's not that hard to go for. He also has a pretty unique dash cancel timing with doing his whole basic into his fully charged EX special that allows him to still be active on screen and quick assist into his other teammate at the last minute to have both of those characters active on screen. And what's really strong about this is that Seth has great boss interruption. This character prevents any boss about to do something big and heavy. If you get the full EX charge up and do this timing that I'm talking about, he is preventing that enemy from fighting and allowing you to get your full rotation off. Also with his other copies of M6, he also gets increased days build up whenever you use a defensive assist for him, allowing him to be a pretty good stunner. Also his M1 increases the overall strength of his shield by 30%, and the anomaly proficiency buff that he gets from his core passive lasts even longer, making his anomaly proficiency build up really strong in competition with a character like Rena, and in some cases even better. And then when we talk about his M6, he's also helping dealing damage by dealing damage up to 500% of his attack with his whole basic, which you're going to be using every time when playing this character. And this move is guaranteed to crit with a 60% crit damage increase. Seth is insane, and all the teams that you say work effectively with Rena, he works with them as well. He works great with Yanagi. He works great with Miyabi. He works great with every anomaly character on this list, and we're in an anomaly meta. I think Seth 0.5, then Rena is still T1. That's my take. And Sokaku is similar to Lucy and Nicole, where the buffs that she provides is really good, but Sokaku's biggest downfall will always be her sluggish movement. She's really slow. She takes up a lot more field time in comparison to Lucy and Nicole, and her ability to quick assist her teammates in is a lot worse due to it being strictly tied to fly the flag, which is a really long animation and start up to it, making her not bad, but not as effective as the other two. She's also very strict to being played with other ice units, so you only really use her with Ellen and Miyabi, which makes her a much less flexible unit than every other support above her outside of maybe Rina, but Rina has a bit more options to teams in comparison to Sokaku, making her not as bad. And then lastly, the boy Ben Bigger. Ben's issue is that he's a defense unit that tries to play like a stun unit and a damage dealer. He wants to support his team, but the supportive capabilities that he provides for his team isn't that strong. He provides a shield and a crit rate buff, which it's okay. It's not what you really care about or want. He does build days pretty well with his counter, and he does have a lot of instances where because of his counter, he's able to boost his damage output. But his damage output isn't strong enough to make him compete with DPS characters. It just makes him a really good damage dealer in comparison to like a Dazer or support character. He tries to play too many different roles in my opinion, and he's not great at all of the ones that he does. He's just decent at everything, which is his biggest issue, and sucks because I like Ben. I thought Ben was really cool. It was pretty good in the beginning of the game, but as you progress, he just gets worse and worse as the game goes by, but it is what it is. But yeah, that's everything regarding Prydwen's tier list. This tier list is better. It's better than what it was originally before, but I just don't agree with combining the DPS because it oversimplifies the DPS characters and what the role that they play, in my opinion, when there's a bit more difference between anomaly DPS and pure DPS than what they state. I would just make some slight adjustments, especially like with placements with like Haramas and Jian. They're effectively the same strength in my opinion. You can't convince me that they're not, but that's just me. I'll probably make my own separate tier list video of just not talking about Prydwen, just doing my own placements and how I would do it, and we'll go about it from there and see how y'all feel about that. Let me know if you guys want to see that or if you're just fine with this one. That's everything for this video. Let me know how you guys feel about Prydwen's tier list below, because I know they've been getting a lot of flack with everything they've been doing for a lot of their games. It feels like that they're stretching themselves a little too thin and they're not being able to test everything properly within all these games. Within the 1.4 recently, it seems like maybe they tested a little bit more with some of these characters, but even then I feel like a lot of these characters descriptions, like their cons and pros, are a little bit outdated now, and those need to be updated too. Again, I appreciate all your love and support. Remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and always remember to believe in you that believes in yourself. I'll see you guys in the next one.